My dear friend Karen Haggard is an interior designer and author living in Southern Maryland. Please, everyone, help me give a warm hug, Zoom welcome to my friend, Karen Haggard.
First, I want to thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm honored, truly honored. Like Cindy said, 13 years ago, my world completely changed in an instant. My youngest daughter, Erin, got meningitis, and I found myself at such a loss, not knowing what to do. 2:30 in the morning, I hear Mom, and go into her room, turn the light on, and right away she screams, the light, and covered her eyes. And put her nightstand light on instead, and I looked at her super flushed pink cheeks, and I felt them, and they were so hot. And I ran to my room, got the thermometer, and her temperature was 104 and climbing. And I knew I had to get her to the emergency room. Threw a bunch of clothes on, we got her in the car, and my husband said, should we call an ambulance? I said, no, I'm just going to take her. I'm going to go right now. I can get her there faster instead of waiting. And got her there, and the doctors, multiple doctors and nurses and machines and all that took place, and they confirmed it was meningitis. And she was very, very sick. The neurosurgeon told me she potentially had bleeding on the brain from the amount of pressure and swelling, and that she might not survive. And about 20 to 30 minutes later, after getting there, she was lifeless. She was just laying there, hooked up to machines that were registering whatever they could, and no response to touch, to sound, to light, nothing, not even to my voice. And then at one point they said, we're doing all we can. And that's when my world stopped. It just literally stopped. And I said, dear God, no. And that, in those wee hours of that morning, the worse she got, the colder I got. Every cell in my body felt she was leaving me. My soul felt her dying. And I didn't know what to do. I felt at that point that the doctors couldn't save her. And I just remember sitting in a chair, this hard little chair in that room, just doubled over, rocking and sobbing and just saying, not like this, not like this. She's only 17, not now. And I felt so lost and so alone and so afraid. And finally it had reached the point, it was about 7 hours later, it was like 9 in the morning, maybe 10 in the morning, and she was still just laying there lifeless on this, gurney, and that they had us in a glass doored room because she was so highly contagious. And at one point everybody that came in had masks and gloves and covers on, and they brought me a set, and I said, absolutely not. I'm going to feel my daughter's hot breath. I'm going to touch her hot cheeks. I'm going to kiss her hot lips. Like, no. And nobody said a word. And then I found myself just stroking her hair and holding her hand and kissing her. And at that point, I knew there was only one place I could turn, and that was to God. And I asked for a Bible. And I remember just sitting in that chair, crying and reading and crying and stopping and sobbing and trying to catch my breath. And my soul and my heart were being ripped apart. And I got to the point I was so cold, I was shivering. My hands were so stiff, I couldn't hold that Bible anymore. And I stood up, and I took Erin's hand again, and I surrendered to God completely. I surrendered to a being I couldn't see, I couldn't hear, and I couldn't touch. And I took that giant leap of faith without question or hesitation that God was real. And I looked upward to God and I said, I need your help. I have never walked this path and I can't do it alone. I'm not strong enough to do this alone. Erin is a piece of me, just as she is of you. And she can't pray for herself right now, so I'm going to do it for her. And I said, I beg of you to save her life. Leave her here on earth with me. I can't survive without her. So if you're going to take her, you take me too. Or better yet, take me in her place. I just felt like I'd just not taken full advantage of this amazing, beautiful gift of life that he had given me. I can look down upon her and love her from above. I don't need to be in the physical world with her. She needs to stay. And I just begged, please, she doesn't deserve this. Not this way. She's so young and has so much ahead of her. And then I asked for forgiveness for all the things that I had taken granted for in this life, that I just didn't see, that I didn't understand, that I didn't take the time to learn. And at that point, I was compelled to raise my right hand to the heaven and I prayed words that I had never, ever put together in my life. And I said, God, turn my flesh to dust to restore Erin's body. Take every bit of breath from my lungs to fill hers with life. Take the light from within me so hers can burn strong and bright. Take every tear I shed and turn it into life-giving water. And take every bit of my life essence that you need and use it to save hers. And I asked God, with my hand held high, to just please let me hear her voice one more time before I go. And I instantly felt someone hold my hand. And there was a warmth that literally flowed down through my arm, across my heart, into my other arm. And I was holding Erin's hand, and I swore it flowed into her too. And at that very moment, I felt I was loved unconditionally for who I am and nothing more. A pure, true love. There was no other love I've ever felt like it before. And I wasn't afraid anymore. And my tears had changed from fear and sorrow and dread to mirroring that love that I felt. And I bent over Erin and I whispered, I love you. And one large tear fell from my eye down my cheek and landed on her lips. And at that point, she looked so alive and so beautiful. And she whispered back, I love you more. And at that point, I knew that I had touched the hand of God and that she was going to be perfectly fine. I felt it in every fiber of my being, and that she was going to survive. And over the next few minutes, I watched her come to life right before my eyes. I wanted to run through the hallways and scream, she's going to be fine, she's going to be fine, she's going to live. And I didn't think anyone would believe me, so I didn't tell a soul. Later that evening, they transferred us to CHOP, and they ran more tests, and they confirmed it was the worst case of meningitis they'd ever seen. And again, they told me she might not survive, and I wanted to tell them the same thing. She's going to be just fine. And when I was in the hospital, the first hospital with her, that moment that I felt someone hold my hand, and that all transpired, right after she said, I love you more, I heard a voice in my head for the first time, as clear and strong as I'm talking to you now, right here. And it said, the body will heal. I turned around to look to see who was standing behind me. It was that strong. And I thought someone had walked in the room during this moment. There was no one there. My heart skipped a couple beats. I got a little bit like, what just happened? And when we were in shop, I watched her over the next 8 days heal. She had a team of 20 doctors and she stunned them all. They didn't think she would make it, let alone survive this without any issues. No issues whatsoever. And on that fateful day 17 years ago, 2 powerful events converged. And I couldn't reconcile either one of them. My daughter almost dying and what I'd experienced. And they were so intertwined, I couldn't separate them. I couldn't process one without the other. And I couldn't understand why she lived, why I was still here, what I'd experienced, what I felt, what I heard. I just didn't have the tools to do it. And so year after year, I kept trying. And year after year, I kept hearing things in my head, seeing things in my head, and feeling things that dealt with other people. And then about 6 or 7 years after that, I was guided to a book, A Course in Miracles. And as I read those 50 principles, I learned that what I'd experienced that day had a name, and it was called a miracle. And those principles answered every single question I had, and they made sense of that entire moment. And that moment was literally the blink of an eye. And it helped me to find the words to explain, not only to myself, but to others, what I had experienced. And there's one of the principles in that book that alludes to a lot of the feelings that I had experienced. And there's a saying in this book that says, any attempt to describe revelation in words is impossible. Revelation includes only experience as it unites you directly with God. It is literally unspeakable because it is an experience of unspeakable love. Miracles unite you directly with your brother, since we are from the same Heavenly Father. And in this case, my brother was my daughter. The Course in Miracles helped me understand that when I'd raised my hand, it was my spirit awakening and uniting with God. I felt the worth of my soul. I felt forgiveness. I felt atonement. I felt revelation, all at the same time, and so much more. I've learned that a miracle has many facets, some that are recognized instantly and some that aren't. God not only saved Aaron that day, but he saved me. He blessed me with hearing, seeing, and feeling gifts from God at that given moment. It took me 10 years to surrender to those feelings and those thoughts and those visions. I fought them. I tried to ignore them, and they weren't going to go away. So I gave in. And then I realized that once I acknowledged them and accepted them and learned about them for the beauty that they give me, I learned they had names: clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentience. In that single moment, I was also given the knowledge of my life's purpose and my soul's mission without knowing it. And a purpose is the reason that something is done. It provides experience for your actions. And a mission is an important purpose, accomplished through strong conviction. And I learned that neither is set in stone, and they change and grow as we change and grow. My life's purpose now is to help others feel their worth, to inspire them, to lift them, and show them that they can achieve what they didn't think they could, to pray for them and pray with them. And my mission, my soul's mission, is to teach. And I believe if I don't share what I've learned nothing at all. A very dear loved one of mine has been going through some hard things. And there was a lot of times she just didn't think she could go on and deal with it anymore. It was too heavy, too much involved. And it was just, 10 steps backward and 1 step forward. And I prayed with her, and I've given her many encouraging words and, tried to do my best to uplift her, not expecting anything in return. And she sent me this picture of a saying, and it said, "Sometimes all it takes is the right person to speak into your life. The right thing spoken can stir and accelerate everything." And then she commented and said, "This is your role in my life." And it made me cry, and it made me smile, and it made me feel so honored that she feels that way about me. And it also confirmed my life mission, my life purpose and soul's mission at the same time. In closing, I'm still learning about everything that was given to me that day. Not only the gift of Aaron's life, but the gifts of the things that I'm experiencing. And all during that miracle moment. I had reached a point that day of miracle readiness. I had experienced a tone and divine revelation. And I had experienced a miracle simply by expressing my love through prayer, all without knowing it. One of the Course in Miracles principles states, miracles are both beginnings and endings, and so they alter the temporal order or the arrangement of events in time. They are always affirmations of rebirth, which seem to go back but really go forward. They undo the past in the present and thus release the future. And I couldn't understand why Aaron lived until I read that. Our miracle was an affirmation of rebirth for both of us in the exact same moment. In that very present moment, Aaron's past was her death, and her future was released as her life. And for me, in that very present moment, my past was my maximal service to Aaron through prayer and love. So my future was released with me feeling the worth of my soul, because in my willingness to give my life for hers, I had recognized the worth of her soul, and I didn't even know it. I learned I can't give without receiving, and I can't receive without giving. They are intrinsically intertwined, and they happen simultaneously. I've learned that Aaron and I experienced our own new beginnings, our own Genesis. And I still have that Bible from that fateful day. And I opened it up years and years later to look at the pages that I read to Aaron. And I was amazed that it was from the book of Genesis. My prayer is that each and every one of you experiences your own miracles and your very own Genesis. Thank you very much for listening to my story. God bless.